Alrighty, welcome back for another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Wednesday, November 9th. We're going to be talking, obviously, a little bit of recruiting. Something happened on Tuesday and earlier this week. I feel like some people might have an idea what I'm talking about. So we've got a lot of recruiting talk. Obviously, there was a decommitment. Could there be more players committing to Texas? What's wrong with Oklahoma? The rumors are flying. People are thinking that the world is ending. Oklahoma football is dead as we know it. They're like Chicken Little. The world is ending. So we're going to go through all the rumors, talk about what does Oklahoma do next, what's going on, and then we're going to be talking West Virginia. OU obviously still has a game despite it losing a commitment this week. There is a football game on Saturday morning. So we're going to be previewing that, give our opinions on the West Virginia game, and hopefully Oklahoma can win on Saturday to become bowl eligible. That still, some people never thought Oklahoma had a shot of even winning 6 games. So, but before we get into it, just want to say we appreciate it. We're knocking on the door of 5,200 subscribers. Help us out, get us there. If you've been here around, seen a few of our videos, hit the subscribe button. It's free. If you're new, do the same thing. It's free. Hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, like the video, comment on the video, stay around for Jose's in the video challenge, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. I almost said the Brandon in the video challenge.
Brandon's in the video challenge presented by Jose.
Pretty much. Brandon he's only got a couple more weeks left, so maybe he'll be making an appearance back on the podcast, hopefully sometime next month. Some people will be excited for that, and some people, I'm sure, just like the Jose and Brom show. So, but anyway, so all right. So Oklahoma ended up losing another commitment, Colton Fossick, 2023 4-star defensive end, edge player out of Austin, Texas, committed to Oklahoma back in July, and he decommitted and flipped to Texas on Tuesday. And he is obviously a Longhorn legacy. He has his list of reasons, being from Austin. His dad played for the Longhorns. A lot of things started playing in Oklahoma's favor. People were not happy. Jose, what do you think about this decommitment and this loss? I can't say I'm shocked.
Yeah, I mean, as a player, you hate losing a guy like that because if you watch his highlights and if you have the opportunity to watch him play at the high school level, he's clearly a very talented edge player. Would have been great to have him in Crimson and Cream, but like you said, at the reasons that he decommitted for, Oklahoma having a bad season definitely didn't help. But it seems like from what he's been quoted as saying, from his the little quote that he put out in the Hayes Fawcett edit about like his heart being at UT, and then whenever he kind of went back in his experience for the Red River game, he mentioned it was weird being there as an Oklahoma recruit when he's been a lifelong Longhorn. It was awesome to have him for the time we did, and it would have been great to have him, actually on the team. But as I've said before, you don't really have a player until they sign that piece of paper. He never really impacted the team on the field. Yeah, it sucks that he's never going to get that opportunity, or likely not going to get that opportunity for Oklahoma. But it's hard to turn down the school you've been a fan of for your entire life. Your entire family's a fan of that team. You live right down the road from them, and they're having a decent season. It's starting to look a little better. Defense isn't amazing, but their edge play doesn't look terrible. So that he feels like there's upside there. If you agree or not, that's your opinion, but he feels like there is, and he wanted there's something there, right? I think that the Oklahoma commitment was probably based on the connection he had with Bates and Venables, because he was very much considering Clemson before both of those guys were hired to be coaches at Oklahoma. If they were Clemson coaches, I think the stories may be a little bit different, because he would at that point get to leave the state like it was expected he wanted to do early on in his recruitment, and it would have never really been the battle of the hometown team versus their biggest rival. It would have been more so he gets to leave and still kind of root for his the team that he's always rooted for as a kid. So I think being Oklahoma actually kind of backfired on Oklahoma in this one scenario because he was a lifelong Longhorn. But again, I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think it's the end of the world. I clearly we've seen some of you guys have seen people on Twitter. We've seen people on Twitter, and maybe you guys are that person or that group of people that think that this is some sign that Oklahoma is a dumpster fire of a program and Venables is a terrible coach and these guys don't know how to recruit or don't know how to coach. I think that's just ridiculous. But I'll end it there so that you can get your point out here, and then we'll go on to more about recruiting and where Oklahoma is.
Like you said, I mean, it does suck to lose a guy like Colton Bosick, a talented top 150 player, 4-star edge player on the defense. You never want to lose a kid like that. I get his points as far as I think it would be hard for me, growing up a Sooner fan, if my dad played for OU and then I committed to Texas and then went to an OU Texas game and rooted for Texas, it would feel bizarre, and I don't think I could do it. Some kids, it doesn't bother them, like it would for me, and it obviously did for Colton. So I'm not upset. I do. It's not shocking because when you show up to the Texas Alabama game, you just show up and you're not using your parents' tickets. You're a guest of Texas football. We kind of shot that down of like, well, it was the biggest game of that weekend. And it's in your backyard, so I can't necessarily blame you for wanting to go. But when he popped up again, you saw him visiting again. At that point, it just didn't look good. And I've talked about that the OU Texas game every year. The winner of the game typically wins out of one or two of the recruits that OU and Texas are both in on. And I do think that there was some sort of influence on him a little bit, obviously being at the game, but the result definitely didn't help Oklahoma, literally being dominated. And that could be what swayed them and put them over the edge, was that game, being on the Oklahoma sideline, Oklahoma not putting up a single point, being pretty much dead in the water the entire game. And it had an impact on them. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, Oklahoma had to pack that game in because Gabriel wasn't there. Reports General Booty was going to play, but then had an allergic reaction, and you're down to Davis Bevel that couldn't throw the football. I mean, you're dead in the water. So I do think that game, that's Texas's win over Oklahoma, just like when Kobe McKenzie, I think that was Oklahoma's win over Texas. So it goes back and forth. Looking at it as a whole, for anyone that doesn't follow recruiting or is new to following recruiting, typically as early National Signing Day, where most of the athletes sign, there's bound to be a few decommitments and flips and commitments elsewhere. And Oklahoma is bound to lose a few and also bound to land a few as well that might be committed somewhere or really close to committing somewhere. And then Oklahoma comes in and flips them. Just because Oklahoma lost one kid to Texas, and obviously they did lose Caleb Spencer to Miami. So there's two decommitments. That doesn't mean that Oklahoma can't turn around and flip two commitments elsewhere from other programs. It's a two-way street. People calling for, Chavis being the wrong guy, Bates being the wrong guy, can't recruit. I mean, I don't know. The expectations are so high and sometimes are so unattainable that things aren't built overnight. Literally, Venables and all these guys are still trying, they have to work and show that it works at Oklahoma. There's only like one coach out there that could literally take any job in college football and probably land at 3 or 4 or 5 stars immediately. And that is Nick Saban, because Nick Saban is literally the greatest ever at the college level, at the collegiate level. Not everyone else can do that. I mean, just if Dabo Sweeney went to some random program, Dabo wouldn't have the same influence as like a Nick Saban would. So having expectations of Brent Venables being a Nick Saban, not saying he can't, over the next 10, 20 years, um, is a little insane. This class is still a top 10 class right now. It's number 8. They're bound to land a few more guys. Could they still go out and go get Tassili Akana? Maybe. And that would be, I wouldn't mind adding Akana, even losing Bostic. That's still a top 50 player, top 75 player. He's a high 4-star. So that's not the end of the world. Now you look at all these, the Texas class now. The Texas class is obviously looking strong. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's not impressive, because what they're doing is impressive. And they are bound to be over 300 points, probably total score, according to 247. They're going to arguably put up probably 2, number 3 class in the country by the time they're done, especially if they land another 5-star or 2. But remember, Texas A&M landed the best class ever in recruiting history. And you see where they're at right now. Just because you get the players on campus doesn't mean that you're going to win games. I'm not saying that Texas is going to be in the same boat as Texas A&M, but just because you land the recruits does not mean it works out in the end. I mean, you got Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. That works out. Texas hasn't had a proven track record of developing talent and putting it on the field and playing at a high level in years. So, what do you think?
I mean, I agree. It at the end of the day, as a fan, and we've said this before, all we should do and really can do is support the team. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be critical of what's happening, but to be calling for people's jobs before they even have the job for a year, to me doesn't make sense. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I didn't say something ridiculous earlier in the year after the UT game, because I did, but I immediately backtracked because I realized it was out of emotion. If you look at it objectively, it makes no sense to start saying that these people weren't the right guys. I mean, and to say that this class isn't good because you lost one guy. They said the exact same people that are saying this now are the exact same people that said it when Ashton Cozart decommitted and when DeAndre Moore decommitted. I believe that's the only true decommitments since Venables has been recruiting this 23 class. Outside of that, I mean, the class itself has stayed pretty strong. I mean, if you really want to think back over the last 6 years, we've seen way more decommitments in one cycle than just 3. Really not that big of a deal. And for the defensive line recruitment, it's still good. I mean, you have 2 elite players right now, and they're still going after more defensive linemen. It's not like they're not aware of what the roster looks like. And if you guys watch the press conference, Brent Venables' press conference from Tuesday, he mentioned like they're very aware of what is happening with that roster. They're more so aware of what's happening than we are as fans and as people that cover the team. They know where they're at. This team is extremely young. That's also something that Venables mentioned. If you look at how many starts these guys have under their belt, for the most part, no one really has a full year of starts, especially at the defensive line. I think the most experienced one is Jeffrey Johnson, and those aren't starts at Oklahoma. And that matters in this system and in college football in general. Most guys aren't going to come in and make that immediate impact that we all hope they do. There's that time that they need to get comfortable and get confident before they can just go full speed. And yeah, it sucks that the team is where it is right now. But again, it's year 1. I think that some people just want to say, well, I don't want to hear it's this year 1 stuff when you see all these other coaches have success. And I agree, it's frustrating, but sometimes you have to also look at instant success versus sustainable success. Look at the teams that we are actually all trying to beat right now. Georgia. Kirby Smart was not amazing as soon as he got to Georgia. It took him a couple of years to get over the hump and get to this state where he's got Georgia football at. Nick Saban, sustainable success over a very long period of time. Like you said, the greatest college coach of all time. Dabo Sweeney, he was not amazing when he first got that Clemson job. It took some time to get that program to where it is now. And I hope it doesn't take as long as it took some of those guys, but a year of suck, and it's not even total suck, a year of average to hopefully have, you know, 10 plus years of really good, I'm okay with. Now, again, like I said last in the last video, if this is a consistent issue in year two and especially year three, then I agree. It's a problem then because then it's not, then these guys are really just preaching and not doing their job and not doing their job effectively. It seems from what we were seeing and hearing from both coaches and players, there's buy-in and it just needs, they need experience. Again, Danny Stutzman said it on the podcast on the Prairie. Give them time to really just get comfortable in what's happening. And if the same issues are occurring, then it's an issue. And a lot of people that I've seen on Twitter are referring to Teddy Lehman's analysis of the game, and he has more knowledge of football than probably we have forgotten, or he's forgotten more than we've ever known. But at the end of the day, he's also an outsider looking at what's happening, right? We all see that the defensive line is getting pushed around and looks like they have no physicality at all. But if you look at the positives, there are positives on this team. The offensive line has gotten progressively better every single time, every single game, especially in the run game. And you don't really see Dylan Gabriel like you did at the beginning of the season, looking at the offensive line, kind of hoping that no one was going to hit him. Now looks like he feels more comfortable in the pocket. The wide receivers are doing better. Jalil Farouk has gotten better every single game. Marvin Mims, I know, has had his struggles in a couple of games, but he's still the Marvin Mims we all expected to have last year and is doing well this year. Braden Willis is doing really well. Like, there's positives about this team that are going to continue getting better as time goes on. I just strongly disagree with the people that are saying that some of these guys weren't the right people. Now, do I feel like there could be some adjustments made? Yeah. But it seems like it's just going to be taking time. And if it, again, year two happens and the same issues are occurring, then yeah, hopefully Venables makes the adjustments that are needed to improve the team. My biggest, like, for example, I think my biggest concern or thing that I'd like to see changed is more a defensive coordinator that's down there with the team. And that to me is a really small thing. I just want to see someone that's super fiery like Brent Venables. And I don't know if Roof is that guy. Maybe he just doesn't feel comfortable on the field. Maybe he just wants to have more of a bird's eye view on what's happening. I just feel like Brent Venables was successful because his intensity was infectious to the rest of the defense. And that's kind of what you want in a defense. You want guys that are going to be out there and be killers, for lack of a better term. Brent Venables is that guy. Chavis seems to be that guy with his personality. I don't know if Roof has that personality, and maybe that's why he's up in the press box rather than down on the field, because he is more of a methodical and calculated defensive coordinator rather than the emotional, fiery one.
And you brought up Kirby Smart. His first year, he went 8-5. That sounds eerily similar. That who you might end up being, you know.
Sustainable success takes time to develop. Lincoln Riley is having instant success, right? But we see the same issues are occurring at USC that have been existing at Oklahoma for years. If he didn't have Caleb Williams, if he had more of an average quarterback, they probably would have lost a couple more games. They've still let teams put up a lot of points on them.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's like I've been saying, if you want these guys fired, who do you go hire? I mean, you're not going to convince Kirby Smart to leave Georgia. You're not going to convince Dabo Sweeney to leave Clemson. I mean, come on. Who are you going to go hire? It's going to be fine. Now, talking about the other, recruiting rumors, Anthony Hill definitely, obviously decommitted from Texas A&M. Texas A&M has taken on water. that's the definition of a dumpster fire. If you're looking for a program that is in a dumpster, it's Texas A&M. Jimbo Fisher has a worse record than Kevin Sumlin. Things are falling apart internally, externally. He can't control anything. He can't be bought out. I mean, Texas A&M is stuck with Jimbo Fisher. It's not a great look. It just isn't. That I feel I'm happy where Oklahoma's at compared to A&M. And I would have never thought I would have said that after that number one recruiting class, because I'm still not convinced that they're not going to lose a handful of people to the transfer portal this fall or this winter. Anthony Hill decommitted. There's rumors floating around that Anthony Hill is looking at Texas, or there's reports too of him looking at Texas. There's rumors flying around that David Hicks is going to Texas and visiting, rumors about Peyton Bowen going and visiting Texas. Again, I believe the Anthony Hill deal about him probably looking at Texas. I'm not saying that David Hicks or Peyton Bowen aren't, but just because of a Colton Vasek flip doesn't mean that Texas is now like in the driver's seat for everyone that Oklahoma was in on. I mean, I guarantee you that Colton Vasek's decision had zero impact on Peyton Bowen or David Hicks. I'm sure they're aware of each other, but they're not like best friends. So unless you start to see Peyton Bowen and David Hicks pop in at Austin, in Austin this weekend. I mean, obviously this weekend is a big game with college, with the nighttime broadcast and college game days going there. It's a big time big time event. If they show up this weekend, then I might believe it a little bit. But thing is, this is going to be classic Texas. Texas, nobody is better at selling mediocrity than Texas is. Same with Texas A&M. Actually, those two schools are darn good at it. And they're going to go out, and TCU's like an 8-point underdog, which is hard for me to even wrap my mind around. I guess it's just like the way that Tennessee was a huge underdog to Georgia, but Texas is not Georgia. I just think that Texas might flop this weekend, and I don't know. I think it's ridiculous. I feel like this is a Twitter rumor, echo chamber, message boards. People are like, oh, Anthony Hill's coming now. David Hicks is coming. He's bringing with him Peyton Bowen. He's looking at A&M. Now he's going to look at Texas. And he's not going to look at Oklahoma. Are you kidding me? They're 5-4. I mean, we're 6-3. We're one game better. Like, it's hard for me to even wrap my mind around.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't understand why I'm not saying it didn't happen in other fan bases, because it's not like I dive deep into other fan bases' emotions on where they're recruiting, where that stands. But it really feels like every time just one little thing goes wrong at Oklahoma, for some reason people just try to pile on. Because like you said, it seems like as soon as Bostic flipped, or that was pretty much the writing was on the table. When he removed all that stuff, people were like, all right, well, now David Hicks is 100% going to be a Longhorn, and Peyton Bowen is going to go visit for sure and going to want to immediately commit after taking just one visit. For one, David Hicks, I saw he hasn't spoken to the Longhorn staff in a very long time, and they just recently spoke. I don't know what the substance of those conversations were, but it really doesn't seem likely that at this point in his recruitment, at this point in where the 2023 cycle is, they would just jump in and become front runners for a potential flip, when he was originally supposed to be a Sooner, is now an Aggie, and just still has his official visit lined up for Bedlam. Peyton Bowen has visited A&M and Oklahoma a lot, and neither school has really been able to make enough to make him flip sooner. So why would people expect him to just take one visit to UT, which again isn't even confirmed? That's not something that is actually happening. It's just rumors. Why would one visit sway him to immediately flip from Notre Dame after just visiting Notre Dame and seeing them beat a number 4 ranked Clemson team? Like, I just don't get why people decide that one little thing means that the world is burning around Oklahoma. Oklahoma's fine. I mean, I'm not happy with where the record stands, but again, sustainable success takes some time to get there. Bob Soups was an amazing year one either, and we all love Bob. Like, you got to give these guys time. If you don't give them time, then you might as well just be Texas.
True, true. So anyway, I mean, I'm curious to see what people have to say. I'm sure they've been commenting as we've been discussing. I think both you and I are on the same page that it's not going to be pretty. You're going to lose a commitment or two going into an early national signing day. Oklahoma's bound to flip one or two guys. People are going to be, I guarantee you, when Oklahoma flips someone before early national signing day or national signing day in February, it's probably like a 4-star. People like, Brent Venables is the guy. I mean, look at what they did, and they finished as a top 6 class. You know, they're the number 5, number 6 class. I totally believed in them. Like, he flipped so and so from whatever school. It's like, if Peyton Bowen flips to Oklahoma, people are gonna forget about all this stuff. That's a thing.
They're
It's
gonna
gonna
need a
be
new pair of underwear after that happens.
yeah. I mean, it's just crazy to me. So anyway, I think just give it time. Rome wasn't built in a day. Oklahoma's going to be fine. I just think take a breath, get off the computer, get off the phone, and don't go on those message boards and don't go on Twitter. It's just people just I don't know. I stay off that stuff for the most part because it gets you nowhere. So um anyway, so let's move on to an actual football game talk. Oklahoma has a game on Saturday, believe it or not. Oklahoma will be able to field a football team. They play West Virginia on Fox Sports 1, FS1 at 11 a.m. in Morgantown. Oklahoma's going on the road. Oklahoma's an 8-point favorite. I feel like that's quite a few points. I'm a little hesitant about that line, but typically when it seems way too many points, that's when the team wins. And I learned my lesson with Tennessee. I've always thought that before, and then I just went against the grain and picked Tennessee. It's just like that whole Texas TCU. Texas is a big time favorite. I think Texas is going to flop, but for some reason, Texas will probably come out and win the game big, just because Vegas knows more than what we know. Coming into this game, Texas or West Virginia, excuse me, is 3-6, 1-5 in conference play. Oklahoma's 5-4 and 2-4 in conference play. Not great for either team. Looking at West Virginia, they're a good rushing team. They can run the ball. Oklahoma ranks dead last in rushing defense at 219, basically 220 yards a game they're giving up, which is not great. West Virginia did lose C.J. Donaldson to an injury for the rest of the year. So that's one of their running backs that was contributing. Tony Mathis Jr. did miss last week's game. He is back for this one. Apparently, or the reports are that he's going to be back for this game. Mathis Jr. has ran 99 times for 492 yards and 5 touchdowns, basically 5 yards a carry. That's pretty efficient as a sophomore. Not too shabby. 5 yards a carry against a good defense or average defenses. It might look like 6 or 7 yards a carry against this big, Oklahoma rushing attack, a rushing defense. So I think Oklahoma is going to be needing to stop the run because obviously that's the strong point of West Virginia. And they've got JT Daniels who can throw the ball, but he's a little turnover prone and whatever. Positives for Oklahoma. The last 2 games, the pass defense has been improved. Could that be the fact that they played Iowa State and Baylor? Iowa State can hardly throw the ball. Blake Shapen struggled to throw the ball. Are the offenses just not good at passing, or is Oklahoma's pass defense actually halfway decent? I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think it's improved, but I wouldn't say it's probably as good as maybe the stats said from last week because they were able to run the ball at will. Why would you pass when you can just run everywhere? But Billy Bowman, and that has helped solidify that back end, and he's been the quarterback of that, defensive backfield, and he's been necessary. Dylan Gabriel, turning the ball over 3 times. A couple of them you could argue weren't his fault, but he didn't put the ball in the greatest places, and he could have done better there. So there's positives and negatives. Oklahoma can run the ball. These teams are eerily similar as far as if you look at average yards per game that they're getting total yards and total yards giving up. They're similar. West Virginia's given up more points than OU on average. What are some of your initial takeaways and thoughts on this game?
The defensive line, if they're not able to look good against this team, hopefully there's a lot of change. So at halftime, JT Daniels has been sacked 14 times. That offensive line is not very good at pass protection. They are good at running the ball, like you mentioned, so they're definitely good at opening up the holes for their running backs. Hopefully, I think that's where the linebackers need to come in and assist them in the run game with some run support. It hasn't been very good. Definitely not last week. I don't think this is a Baylor team with the amount of physicality, but they're not bad at running the ball. Definitely don't expect I don't expect Oklahoma to stop the run by any means, but hopefully they're able to neutralize it enough to not let it get out of hand. In the passing game, going back to that, JT Daniels is not that guy. Dude's been in college for the last decade, it feels like, and just hasn't managed to become what he was expected to be coming out of high school. A lot of it early on was because of injury. Now it really just seems that it just something's not clicking. He has 13 touchdowns and 8 picks on the year. Not great. So definitely prone to making mistakes, and hopefully the defensive backs can capitalize on that. I'd like to see a little bit more CJ Colden. He comes in after Jaden Davis or Woody Washington aren't doing great. I don't understand why he's just brought in as cleanup rather than just being given the opportunity to start. If he usually does well when he does get when he does get the opportunities. I would like to think Oklahoma can win this by a lot. Their defense isn't very good either. They're ranked 100 overall, where Oklahoma's ranked 110th. So it's not like we're playing some powerhouse defense like we were against Iowa State. The team should be able to score points. It's really just making sure that we neutralize that running game. If they can keep that running game to just average, this this should be a game where Oklahoma does win in double digits. That task seems like a tall task to ask of this defensive line right now, but that essentially should be the game plan. If you can neutralize that, make that running game look average, make JT Daniels beat you with his arm. He's definitely not just a statue back there. He's not the most mobile person in the world, but he'll use his legs to make some plays. He's not Adrian Martinez by any means, but I feel confident enough that that 8 point line is a good spot. Oh, this Oklahoma team should beat this Mountaineer team by 10 points if they're both playing good game, or if Oklahoma's playing a good game. If they're not, then yeah, it's going to be close. But if Oklahoma plays just a good game, not a great game, not a perfect game, it should be a 10 point plus victory.
In theory, right?
In theory, it's a lot easier said than done, clearly, because they haven't shown up, especially last week. But again, they
Yeah.
don't have to play the perfect game, just the good game.
Yeah. And, make JT Daniels beat you. Obviously, West Virginia probably has identified that the rushing defense of Oklahoma is the weakest point. Not that the pass defense is great, but it's better. Dylan Gabriel, I'd love to see him protect the ball like he has for most of the season. Last week, that cost Oklahoma the game. It's hard to win whenever you're -2 in the turnover battle. It's really tough. And you give up short fields to the defense. I'd love to see Eric Gray continue to dominate. Hopefully, go over 1,000 yards rushing against West Virginia. I think he will. I think he's going to get a heavy workload. I think he'll probably have 150 total yards. He's going to be heavily used, and I'd like to see Marvin Mims put together another solid game, back-to-back games for this offense. And I'd like to see this offensive line take over and let Oklahoma run the ball and play a little more ball control offense and slow the game down a touch and keep that defense, Oklahoma's defense, off the field, and maybe win the time of possession battle, and maybe win it 35-25, 34-26, take a possession or two away from West Virginia and let this defense get some more rest, protect them, run the ball more, and be very methodical. You don't need the big shots down the field. Every now and then it's good, and you got to keep them honest, but just play a little slower, hold the ball, you're in no rush, and just play it kind of like the Big Ten outside of Ohio State and Michigan. Play kind of slow. I think if you can take one or two possessions away from West Virginia because you're holding the ball, it's going to make a big difference. And you're going to keep these guys fresher for the fourth quarter when you need the gotta have it plays.
Yeah, and West Virginia, I will, to their credit, in the last two games they've played versus Iowa State and TCU, beginning of the game they've been pretty close, but when it comes to late in the third and the fourth quarter, that's when they weren't able to continue with their game plan, or the other team was just able to dominate. It would not surprise me if when halftime comes, it's a relatively close game, field goal, 6 points, whatever, what have you. This needs what hopefully it's not what's going to happen. Hopefully Oklahoma comes out fast and is able to execute. But again, would not be surprised if it's close at halftime. I think the second half is going to be where you're going to see that separation start to happen. If we use the last two games as an indication, because West Virginia is coming out hot against teams where they really shouldn't be competing against, and then they drop off when it comes second half.
I agree. And the big guy to keep an eye on for West Virginia on the defensive side is Lee Capoga. I think that's how you say it. He's got 58 total tackles. He's got a couple sacks on the year. He's their best linebacker on this team. He came out of JUCO. I can't remember where he came from. Oklahoma should be able to go into West Virginia, dominate the line of scrimmage, run the ball, and be able to throw the ball, but mainly run the ball with Eric Gray and Major and maybe even Tolly Walker gets a few carries. Go into Morgantown, win the time of possession battle, win the turnover battle, and limit possessions for West Virginia, and you mitigate your risk, because your defense is your risk, and you got to mitigate it. And I'd like to see that out of Levy in this offense, of being mindful of not trying to go a million miles an hour, because if you only are on the field for a minute or two and you're throwing your defense back on the field, typically it's not great things that are going to come with that.
I think we're going to see a similar game plan to last week's Baylor game. Pretty balanced attack overall. And I mean, the biggest issue was the turnovers last week. If they can just eliminate those, that should be fine. Pretty similar game plan. It was a very balanced attack last week. Wouldn't be surprised if it's similar this week. It has been routinely that way throughout the year, outside of the games where Dylan wasn't available to play. It's been 50-50 for the most part. I'm going to disagree with the tempo. I think that's what kind of separates, but he only does it if you've noticed, when they are really starting to get the first downs more easily with Eric Gray. It's not like he's just going out there and trying to blast off, get off the field in 2 minutes. It's if the offense looks like they're in a rhythm to start off the drive, that's when he's going to go fast. And it definitely can be beneficial, but I do agree that time of possession is going to be important to try to keep the defense rested for the times they do have to be on the field. Because if we only have 20, 25 minutes of possession, it is going to be tough for that defense to keep points from being scored.
And that's what happened in the Baylor game and we're so thin on the defensive front and the linebacker, the front seven. The gotta have it moments get Baylor off the field. They don't have the depth, and everyone's exhausted. and that's typically what ends up happening. They're exhausted, and then their confidence is shook. So overall, I think Oklahoma goes out to West Virginia, wins, gets their bowl eligibility. I don't have a score prediction. I will for Friday's video. Do you agree that you think Oklahoma goes out and wins this game?
Yeah, like it. I'm going to go ahead and give. I'm not going to give my score prediction, but I'm going to take the Oklahoma -8.
All right. Oklahoma -8 for Jose. I'll save mine for the Friday video. But do you have anything else to add? I think we kind of covered it all. Any other thoughts? If not, the individual challenge, Brandon's individual challenge presented by Jose for everyone.
Let's go with. You know what? I don't want to keep it football related. Let's get away from the Twitter toxicity of some stuff, especially with recruiting. Um, what's one of just tell us a movie you've seen recently. I was actually watching a lot of movies this last weekend. It's kind of time to chill, especially with the holidays coming up. I'm gonna have a lot of time on my hands to just sit down and watch TV. So throw out some recommendations.
Movie recommendations. Yeah, definitely do that. Also, after you do that, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. Remember, if you're already subscribed, when you like and comment, that helps us out a lot as well. And we're trying to grow this channel, and we're going to continue to deliver good content, even when this football season's over. No matter if Oklahoma continues to win or continues to lose, we're going to continue to be here. So we'll catch you guys next time.